Here's Johnny.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
It's so simple.
Roll out.
I am Iron Man.
This is a tasty burger.
Welcome to the In Session Film Podcast.
Hello and welcome to Chasing the Gold. I'm Shadan Larkey. This is an episode that I have been wanting to do for quite some time, which is diving into all of the Oscar-nominated short films. And there's one person that I knew I had to have for this, which is my friend Joey Moser, the co-founder of The Contending. Joey, thank you so much for carving out this time to geek out with me about the short films.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. I will go anywhere and everywhere to talk about short film categories.
Well, okay, let's actually start there because of all the Oscar people out there, I know you are the person that I consider sort of the shorts person. Like you really feel passionately about shorts and you follow them. I remember we saw each other at TIFF and you were telling me like the shorts programming was part of it. You make sure to have the shorts programming as part of your schedule, like from earlier, even before the season officially starts. How did you become like passionate about shorts? Where did the seed of passion come from?
It kind of started when I lived in Pittsburgh, and there was a small movie theater that would have the shorts programs, and I thought I was so not exclusive. I felt so smarmy about going to see the short films in a big theater. Excuse me. With people that, myself included, I didn't know anything about the short films. I think a reason why I love them is that since there's less prominent main coverage on them, they generally get to be a surprise for a lot of audience members, and I find that to be very refreshing. And then when I wrote for Awards Daily in like the spring of 2020, I was sort of given kind of carte blanche to cover them. I wasn't really given a lot of restrictions to do that, and I sort of really realized how vast this world is. There's festivals dedicated to it. There's usually every major film festival that you hear about, there are shorts programs that happen that sometimes lead to like Oscar qualifying awards, and that has to be so exciting for a filmmaker. And I've gotten the fortune to speak to a lot of creative people who, their first big thing is to make a short film, and I think those people are really excited to talk about them. And I don't know, it's covering short films, it's less jaded. You have to the artists really have to hustle. They're really excited to talk about their project. If one project is successful, it could lead to something else. So I just think that the short film world is very exciting. And if people like sort of do a little digging and tap into it, you'll sort of realize like how vast this world really is.
Well, as I mentioned, I don't think anyone covers shorts as well as you do. So if anyone listening is curious about this year's shorts, go to The Contending and see Joey's coverage there. But Joey, okay, I texted you this before we got started, but I found this year's shorts to be pretty heavy. I mean, and I have not been following the shorts nearly as closely or as long as you have, but did you find like this year to be, what stood out to you in terms of this year's sort of crop?
Oh wow. It's so usually what I like to do is once the short lists come out, when they release, it was released in mid-December this year, they narrow it down to 15 per category: documentary, live action, and animation. I thought the documentary shorts were especially heavy. There were a couple on there that I was not the short list had a lot of different perspectives, different subjects, but like there was a documentary that I actually thought might have gotten nominated called Chasing Rue. It's a documentary set in Australia about the culling of kangaroos. That was super, super intense. Yeah, I think I was a little surprised by the variety of points of view, variety of scope, and variety of points of view that the shorts do bring, especially this year. Sorry, I'm just pulling them up right now. Like there are some other things like in live action short that I thought were a little bit more up the Academy's alley. Like, but some of these like live action shorts specifically, we got immigration, we have child poverty, essentially, a sort of kooky German comedy, a true story about a rhinoceros being hunted and the people trying to stop it. And the last one is, which one it can, is about standing up to horrible leaders who are trying to take dignity away from people. So live action short, yes. When I got your text, I could see that. There's not like a super super light comedy in that bunch. I sort of went roundabout way to answer your question. Yes.
No, yeah, as I mentioned, like I'm not a big crier when I watch films. I don't know why, but just these shorts like absolutely wrecked me. And Joey, I didn't get a chance to have you on sort of before the nominations came out. You mentioned one film, but what were some of the other ones that you were surprised didn't make it?
Like across all the categories.
Yeah.
So the one that I was kind of really bummed that made the short lists that didn't get in was a film called Room Taken. It's available on YouTube if people want to watch it. That one is about an immigrant who's living in Ireland who he has to stay at homeless shelters. He doesn't have a place to live. One day when he is leaving a cafe, he notices a blind woman leaves, and someone who works at the cafe sees that she left her bag. So she was like, hey, can you go chase her down and give her bag? And he meets up with her right around her front door, and he steps into her house because she opens the door for him, and the phone rings, and she goes to pick it up, and she's like, thank you so much. She's like calling out to him, but he realizes maybe I won't say take this to his advantage, but he sneaks up into her attic and takes refuge there, and she doesn't know that he's there. It sounds really treacherous, but they really sort of lean into how he wants to help her. He knows that he gleans that his her husband has recently passed. She is grieving, and he like starts fixing some stuff around the house for her, and then it felt like it could go one way, but it doesn't go that way. I thought that could have gotten in. An Orange from Jaffa is another one that I really loved. That one. It's about a young Palestinian man who is trying to get into the West Bank, and no cab driver will take him across the border. And he can't. He gets into the cab with one man who accepts that he will take him over. He has like a non-traditional ID, and people are a little skeptical of that. I thought that movie did really well in terms of establishing the relationship between Jaffa, the young man, not Jaffa, the young man, and the cab driver. I thought their relationship was really great to watch. Claudia, I love Claudia. That's also on YouTube. It's about a woman who is she is like sort of a housekeeper for a priest's living quarters, but on the side she also teaches like Irish step dancing. And there's a young girl whose father is eager to get her into a class, and the talent that she exudes is so impressive to her that when she realizes that maybe she can't bring this young girl into her class, she may have to like fudge some silly rules in order to accept her. That's sort of something about the live action short film race, where it's a lot of times there are stories about a character who has to make a really tough decision, and the tension of that happens a lot. I love that movie. And I guess the last one, sorry, I just keep talking, is there's a movie called Dovecote, which was directed by Zoe Saldana's husband, Marco Perego, an Italian filmmaker. She's in the film. I was really not surprised that it got shortlisted, because it's a beautifully made movie. It's about a woman played by Zoe who is being released from a prison, and it's sort of silent. It's shot in mostly black and white. It's sort of a non-traditional sensory narrative, and I was excited to get to see that on the shortlist. And I predicted that it would get in just because Zoe and her husband were doing a lot of press together. I was hoping that would have gotten in, because it's just unlike I've seen in the last like 2 or 3 years to make it onto the short list, but alas, it did not get in. But yeah.
Yeah, I had both Dovecote and An Orange from Jaffa in my predictions. And I should mention before we get into this, I will in the show notes link all of the like publicly available shorts, including the ones that Joey has mentioned, even if they haven't been nominated, because I agree with you, Joey. I think any eyeballs that we can get on these films, nominated or not, I think the talent involved really deserves it. I'm going to put you on the spot, Joey. How well did you do in terms of your predictions and what ended up getting nominated?
You know what's really funny is I consider live action short to be kind of my bread and butter. I watch more live action shorts than I watch animated shorts or doc shorts. And of the 3 categories, I think live action I did the worst. Predictions wise, I did the best. I got 4 out of 5 in animated. I think 3 out of 5 in doc, and I only got 2, and 2 or 3 in live action. I predicted Anuja, Claudia, Dovecote, The Man Who Could Not Remain Silent, and Room Taken. So I only got The Man Who Could Not Remain Silent, and hold on. Maybe I think that's all I predict. Maybe that's the only one I got, which is insane.
I think in
I got Anuja, yeah.
Yeah, in live action, I had Anuja, Aileen, I'm Not a Robot, and The Man Who Can. I think the only one that I missed was The Last Ranger, and then animated short, I did not do great, and I think I got maybe 3 out of 5 on documentary short. What stood out to me this year is there was a lot of like foreign language across all of the categories. A lot of the films were non-English language films, which I thought was interesting. There was quite a few like silent, not a lot of dialogue. Is that something that's like maybe par for the course, or do you think maybe we saw some shorts this year that were a little bit more like risk taking?
I think for specifically live action short, they really respond to story. They do pull from all areas of the world. There's usually a lot of international titles there. I sometimes see people say, well, there's a famous person in this. Of course, that'll get nominated. That's not always the case. Like I think 2 or 3 years ago, Pedro Almodovar had a short film, The Human Voice, with Tilda Swinton, shortlisted, did not get in. Same director had Strange Way of Life. It has Pedro Pascal. It has Ethan Hawke, shortlisted, did not get in. I think, and that's the reason why I thought something like Room Taken would get in, because it is sort of like this heartwarming, story-driven narrative that could get in. But I think more often than not, there are a good amount of international or foreign language films that do get in. I think they just respond to how the story makes them feel, I think.
Well, how much do you think the timeliness of a short, because I know when we talk about like best documentary, usually, a timely doc will be the one that ends up taking it. Do you find that to be the case in the shorts categories as well?
Yeah, I think it's a question of timeliness, but also publicity. Like, on one hand, I think that Anuja has a really good chance of winning. Just got picked up by Netflix. It's going to hit Netflix, I think, in the next week. That has a lot of good, big names behind it, like Priyanka Chopra is a producer, Mindy Kaling is a producer. I'm blanking on the other producer's name. She won for documentary short 2 years ago. She was a co-director of The Elephant Whisperers. She was a director, a co-director on that. She's a producer of Anuja. But I do think that something like Alien, that film is very accessible. You can watch it on Vimeo. That is a story-driven film, but also I would not be surprised if that wins because of the BS that is happening in the country right now. A lot of people, when they find out what it's about, I think that they will be more compelled to see it. So yeah, I do think timeliness does play a factor. I don't think it does not play a factor.
Well, let's just talk about the, shall we say, orange-colored elephant in the room. I think this year is going to be very telling in terms of how political the Oscars are going to get. If the winners are going to be sort of maybe some sort of protest or, a commentary on what's going on. As we're recording this, we're like smack dab in the middle of the ongoing Amelia Perez controversy, which I will get into at some point on this podcast. So I'm curious, like, what do you make of this? I mean, do you think that they're going to be maybe voting with all of this in mind, or do you think that they're going to go the other direction and vote for something that may be like a more feel-good pick? As we mentioned, maybe there's not that many of them, but like, where do you think that we're going to fall on this spectrum, both in the shorts categories and generally, if you have any thoughts?
Ooh, I feel like in general, I feel like we could see a lot of people voting for. I think Amelia Perez is a big question mark. I just said to somebody yesterday, I was like, I just feel like everything about that movie. I don't know of anybody who, in my real life, I don't know of anybody who's like so unbelievably passionate about it. I can think of two off the top of my head who just love that movie. But then my brain goes, I don't know what that means to who. Then I feel like if you abandon that idea, what wins Best Picture? That's a whole other conversation. But I think that I wonder if they will, like, for instance, in live action short, also something that sticks out to people. There's always this kind of joke, like people just vote on the title that they like. And in the orange in the bag of apples, if it were up to that, the movie that sticks out to me is I'm Not a Robot, just because it's a catchy title. It's lighter. It goes into some darker directions towards the end. But I don't know if they would go for that over something like The Man Who Could Not Remain Silent. That title sticks out too. And with the sort of resistance on a more liberal side of the Academy, I could maybe see the same sort of noticeable title thing be applied to that. Oh, The Man Who Could Not Remain Silent. There's a lot of shit going on in the world. Maybe that'll stick out to them because it's a sort of a resistance sounding title, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I have to mention, like, when I was making my predictions, the main thing that I was thinking about was the titles, because I just knew, okay, people aren't going to have enough time to watch 45 short films before they vote. So, something like Yuck, I think, benefited from a sort of catchy title. And I agree with you about The Man Who Could Not Remain Silent. And I mean, I agree with everything you said. I think just in terms of the Amelia Perez of it all, any sort of friend of mine that's like watching the nominations now that they've come out, I've just gotten so many texts of like, how did this get nominated? How did this get nominated? But I don't think that, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is this is going to be a test of like how much are voters paying attention to discourse.
Mhm.
Because I could argue that in years past they haven't, but I think this year it has now exploded to a level that is truly hard to ignore.
Mhm.
So like maybe that obviously might affect a film like Amelia Perez, but is that going to kind of make its way into other categories? I'm not really sure.
I mean, I feel like when a lot of these like sort of conversations or controversies erupt, I keep thinking, okay, this is just online. This is just film Twitter. This isn't the real world. Real world. Um, I don't know though, because all the stuff that is happening with like a certain performer's tweets and social media presence, like that's getting reported on like in the trades, varieties breaking news about it, Hollywood Reporters putting articles out about it. So it's not like the industry doesn't know about it. Um, I still think I keep seeing all these people saying that like Amelia Perez is going to go 0 for 13. I don't think that's going to happen. Because it's clear that the international contingent in a lot of areas still love the movie. So I think that Amelia Perez is still going to win something. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think people saying 0 for 13, that's I just wonder how much of a not punishment, but like how much of a damage or how much of a stain is this
Sure.
controversy going to be? And I agree. I've had this conversation of how much of it is online versus real world, and not just like I think all of the comments about the film, quite frankly, even before the tweets controversy, like all of the sort of negativity or negative feedback or whatever you want to call it, I think it's all valid and based on people saying this is not an accurate representation of people's experiences. But
Mhm.
clearly the industry was supportive of it. That's how we got here. But I think I completely agree with you. I think now it's like it's too loud, it's too big to ignore, and rightfully so. In my
Yeah,
opinion.
I mean, I was speaking to somebody. I had a conversation just last night. I had friends over, and we watched some TV, and we watched Wicked again, and it was something about one person had seen Amelia Perez, the other person was asking about Amelia Perez. Both of these people, both speak Spanish, and they were having a conversation. One person was asking, "Well, is it really true what everybody's saying about the language?" And the other person was like, "Yes, I also think it's a bad movie." And then I was sort of just like sitting there, being the white cis man standing there, and I was just thinking, I wonder if there are some people who hear these conversations and then they think to themselves, well, I like the movie and I'm going to vote for it. I think it's audacious. I love Jacques Audiard. He's an auteur. He's never had awards attention before. I'm still going to vote for it. So I feel like every single time that I hear someone specifically talking about that movie, my ears perk up because I'm just like, every conversation I listen to is so different and so um nuanced in terms to how they're reacting to this movie and how they they think that people should or should not vote for it.
No, I completely agree with you. And yeah, I don't think, and this is why I am planning on maybe, digging more into this in a later episode, but I don't feel like I'm the right person to comment on it. I mean, we're both American, so like it's hard for us to say what is culturally appropriate and what is not. And I think anytime somebody from any marginalized community says, "Hey, this is offensive to our community," we owe it to them to pay attention.
Yeah.
Um, but as much as you and I and people online are paying attention and or trying to take that feedback in, again the question becomes, are members of the academy doing that as well?
Yeah.
And I guess we won't know until, and it's hard because a lot of these voting bodies have already, like Critics' Choice has already voted, so it won't be until SAG or BAFTA where we can kind of see if
Yeah. What I mean, who knows? What if someone like Carla Sofia Gascon wins Best Actress at Critics' Choice? We don't know. But then the way Critics' Choice voted so long ago that it's just like that doesn't really does that or does that not shape the race later? Like, just because Critics' Choice or somebody else votes for that does not mean that there's going to be a connection to the Oscars. It's such a weird year.
Right. Which, back to the shorts, I do think
Sorry.
that
We just went-
no. But I mean, I think it's all relevant because I do think that people are going to be voting with this lens of like, you know, really bad things are happening and they're going to vote accordingly. I mean, even outside of the current administration, before that, there was obviously everything going on in LA. And so I feel like the mood is going to affect people. Again, I don't know if that means that they're going to want to go towards something positive, or if they're going to like say like, I need to make a statement with my vote. I really have I don't know at this point.
Do you think so? Let me ask you if you think someone wants to make a statement with their vote in specifically live action short, what do you think is the most likely consensus to win if they want to have like a protest vote?
I would say, is it Alien or Aileen?
So I actually thought it was Aileen, like a lien on a house, like the themes of a lien on a house, but they pronounced it Alien during the nomination, so that's what I'm going with.
Well, I think that one, I mean, first of all, I again, that was just one of the ones that struck me emotionally, and I just feel like it's hard to get it out of your head, and it's very blatant. I mean, it shows President Trump in the short on television. It's very timely to what's going on right now. I think if you wanted to make a statement of condemnation, that's probably what I would go with. And then, as you mentioned, The Man Who Could Not Remain Silent, I think that would probably be another one. But then I think if you were sort of leaning the other direction, like I'm Not a Robot, if you wanted to do like you were mentioning the apple in the bag of oranges, then it would probably be I'm Not a Robot. I mean, would you agree?
I would. I didn't predict I'm Not a Robot because the last 2 years, there was like one clear international, like darker comedy. There was one called Dead Cat. I don't know if it's just a coincidence. They were both French. One of them is called Dead Cat, about two parents trying to tell their child about how their cat died. And the year before that, it was a short called You're Dead, Helen, which I think is a really funny title about a ghost who will not let go of her boyfriend and will not let him move on to date somebody else. So I didn't predict I'm Not a Robot because I was like, oh, it's going to be the international shortlisted thing that doesn't get in. But it is the only one that's on this list that has a sort of comedic edge.
But even that one, Joey, so we should mention it's about a woman who she's doing the sort of checkbox of like check bicycles or whatever to prove to prove that you're not a robot, and then she starts to doubt whether or not she is a robot. That to me also got quite dark, as you mentioned towards the end, in a way that I wasn't expecting, and I again was like shockingly moved by it. It touches on like feminism and sort of like, I don't know, I can't think of
like body autonomy.
Yes, autonomy, exactly. So that in and of itself is political in its own, in a different way. Maybe not as overtly as something like Alien, but
it's very. It also helps that, I mean, at least today, I keep seeing the title of the movie popping up like when I'm doing stuff online, like it's like prove that you're not a robot, and ever since it was nominated, every single day I think about it because I have to prove that I'm not a robot. It is sort of like it sort of has that relatable, universal, obviously crossing borders because it's a German language film, that maybe that'll stick out to people because everybody has to do that every day, and maybe like me, voters will think of the title every single time they have to click on every single image of a Dairy Queen when they want to just watch something online.
So if you had to predict a winner, what would you go with? as of Saturday, February 1st, 2025?
I think I would play it a little safe, and go with The Man Who Could Not Remain Silent. It was the Cannes winner. I did not know going into the film that it was based on a true story. I interviewed the director who told me about how he wanted to not like sucker punch the audience with how the film kind of changes perspectives. But I think the combination of the title, the subject matter, and the immediacy of it, I would pick that with maybe something like Anuja and Alien right behind it.
And the ending is again so striking that it's like it leaves an impression. It's not something that you can sort of forget about once you've seen it, and I think that's really important too. And again, really timely. Of like, if you see somebody that's potentially being taken away, what do you do? You know, would you speak up or not? And it sort of touches on like religion and sort of persecution for religious reasons or ethnicity, nationality, things like that. So it is very timely. I am currently predicting that to win. I think I'm going to stick with it for the time being as well. But I have not seen The Last Ranger. Do you have any thoughts on that one before we move on to another category?
Yeah, that one. I will say, not like trigger warning. It's a true story of I lose it anytime I see like any sort of animal in distress. That is a film that took me by surprise. I had it when I did my predictions for the shorts. I had it in the like watch out for category. It has a little bit of a slower start. It's about like a young girl who is living in South Africa with her father, who sells little carvings of rhinos. And this is like the pandemic is slowly slowing down, and she sees a woman that she's familiar with, who is a ranger who protects animals and rhinoceroses from poachers. And it is a film about this little girl. She's probably like 8, 9, who gets kind of embroiled in this. Quite literally, there are poachers around, and seeing this woman, she doesn't have a mother figure in her life because her mother's no longer there. But there's somebody else who writes for our site at the Contending who he thought that was his favorite movie on the short list. I would watch out for that one because it is a true story. They use real imagery from certain things that happen in the film. And I think if you're a big sort of easy get for animals like me, then you might vote for it because of how it ends.
Well, let me ask you this before we move on to like another category. Of the 3 shorts category, which one do you think is the hardest to predict who our winner might be?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think Doc Short feels pretty easy. I think it might be this one. I think there's I think in the other 2 categories there might be I think people might be predicting sort of the same 2 or 3. I think live action short could go a number of ways.
Interesting. I would not have thought that, but I'll tell you why. My goal was to watch all of these before we did this, but as I mentioned, I was so emotionally wrecked by these films that I was like, I can't. Like I was like, I need to stop.
Which one wrecked you the most?
I mean, Alien, that one was really hard. Incident was really hard. Death by numbers. I mean, I was like literally sobbing. And as I mentioned,
hearing you talk about the docs, I was like, maybe it isn't live action short. Maybe doc is harder than live action short.
And I haven't gotten around to I Am Ready Warden, which I know is going to wreck me as well. I just Yeah, I don't know if it's like I'm just in a more emotional space or if these I
Yeah.
think they're just heavy. But let's go to Doc next. So we have I'm Ready Warden, Incident, Death by Numbers, The Only Girl in the Orchestra, and Instruments of a Beating Heart. Joey, what stands out to you about this category?
Oh wow. If I were to say, not to like jump to a prediction right now, but I think there's a lot in here that there's three in particular that deal with personal justice. Mainly being the first three, Death by Numbers, I Am Ready, Warden, and Incident. I think the other two, it's interesting that they feel a little lighter and they both deal with music in a different way. The Only Girl in the Orchestra is about the first woman to play for the New York Philharmonic as she is entering her retirement, and Instruments of a Beating Heart is this really sweet movie about this young I think Chinese girl who really wants to participate in a musical presentation for the incoming, I think, first graders. Um, so it's interesting that one is about a woman who's entering retirement, and the other one is about this young, sweet, eager young girl. But I think the other three, what sticks out to me, it's really about things that are obviously going on in the real world. Death by Numbers, school shooting, I'm Ready, Warning, Capital Punishment, Incident. It's about violence, police brutality against the Black community in Chicago. I think Incident is astonishing. I think that I just spoke to the director, Bill Morrison, yesterday, and it was just sort of like I felt not like an idiot talking to him about it, but it was just like I'm this, white privileged guy. And there's a lot of sections. If people haven't seen it, it is available on YouTube through the New Yorker. There's nowhere to hide with that movie. It's literally reconstructing a horrible incident where a Black man was murdered in broad daylight. You're watching police officers lie and sort of buy into their own lie in order for them to comfort themselves into thinking that they're not going to get in trouble. I've seen that one, I think 3 or 4 times, and I feel like pinned to my seat watching it because we are literally watching real things go down. I'm not sure if that answered your question, but that's something that I noticed. That I think personally, if I was a voter, I would vote for Incident just because it's sort of spare, no frills. It reconstructs everything, but it also is just like, watch this. It's sort of like, this is what happened, and let me show you how it happened. And I'm going to be very clear and precise on how it happened, and it throws you into chaos, and it doesn't try to be like, let me hold your hand and show you how it works. Like there's the screen is splitting and moving, and there's text going on of people all at the same time. And I just think, I don't know, I think this one sticks out to me because it doesn't look or sound like the rest of them. That's what I would say I would notice if I look at these 5. I'm just rambling. Don't mind me.
No, I love your rambles, Joey. Ramble away. You're welcome to come here and ramble anytime you want. You have an open invitation to come ramble with me. And no, I mean, we mentioned it, it's through the New Yorker, so the accessibility is there. Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't the Chris Bowers short that won last year also through the New Yorker? So
yeah.
So people do pay attention. The New Yorker brand carries a lot of weight just in general.
Also, I'm Not a Robot is up through the New Yorker, so.
I mean, I was really struck by Death by Numbers just because I think it touches on a lot. Obviously, it touches on school shootings. It touches on even capital punishment, if that's right, wrong, fair, etc. PTSD, trauma, the healing power of art, all of so I think there's a lot of sort of components there. my question for you is, as we mentioned, sort of there's three that are three that are dealing with, sort of these more timely, real world. Not that the others aren't, you know what I mean. And then you have the two that are kind of more music related and a little bit lighter. Is there a world where there's like a vote split type thing that could happen, you think? Or do you think it's like if somebody did decide to pick something lighter, then they would be torn between the two lighter music related ones?
I think okay, so I think out of the two lighter ones, Netflix is really good in this category. Last year, I think, was the first time, and I think this is probably wrong, I think 7 years that it did not. First of all, it had multiple films on the short list, and then it got one or more in. And last year, they only had, I think, one film. It was called Camp Courage. It did not get nominated. I think a lot of people... Netflix had 2 films this year, this and Michaela's Voice. I think a lot of people predicted Michaela's Voice and not The Only Girl in the Orchestra.
Including me, I should mention.
I did too. I predicted Michaela's Voice. I think I was influenced when I was like, I'm really confused. There's a lot of really good stuff in here. What do I do? And I picked Michaela's Voice over The Only Girl in the Orchestra. The only thing about The Only Girl in the Orchestra that I am curious about is the subject of that movie is very vocal about not being celebrated. So the film is directed by her niece, Molly O'Brien, and she repeatedly says a couple of times, like, I'm not special. I was just part of a group. I think she likens herself, I think, to like a part of a crew on a ship, I think. I wonder a little bit if some people will hear that and be like, well, fine. I like the movie. I think it's really well made. It's very lovingly made. But I wonder if some people will see it and think, okay, well then doesn't want to be celebrated, and that's fine. I might be the only one that thinks that people might do that. I think the heavier, I use that in air quotes, but I mean, I think the other 3 are given a little bit more consideration than the 2 lighter ones. So I think the more serious ones, the more topical ones, are the ones that are being more considered. I think those are the ones I think that I see more people talking about.
Well, Joey, you bring up an interesting point, and you would be the person to ask about this, which is that how do you think people vote in terms of the shorts? Because, and I bring this up because we know, of course, because of the horrific wildfires in LA, that perhaps not all Academy voters even voted for the nominations. I'm assuming that in particular for the shorts, maybe people just don't get around to them. So a lot of people skip those. I mean, in the conversations that you've had with people in the industry, do you feel like that's the case? Do you feel like, I guess what I'm trying to ask is, how much do you think people are actually sitting down and really giving these a consideration? Because we have talked about catchy titles.
Yeah. I think it's hard to get to all the films anyway. So I think that would be sort of maybe amplified a little bit by all the horrible stuff that's going on in California right now. So I expect a little bit sort of more of the same, like sort of business as usual. Maybe people don't get to them, they vote on, titles. But then I think the titles themselves are something to consider. Like all Academy members from any branch were able to vote in the preliminary round of voting, and they had to meet a viewing requirement to vote in the category. And then according to like even the shortlist press release, it says, Academy members from all branches were invited to participate in the preliminary round of voting and must have met a minimum viewing requirement. That phrase is apparently stuck in my brain. Minimum viewing requirement. In the nominations round, Academy members from all branches are invited to opt in to participate and must view all 15 shortlisted films to vote. So that's why I think maybe it's something to go with. Something okay, so like with Doc Short, I sometimes think that this is like an imaginary conversation, but I think an imaginary conversation might happen between somebody and be like, "Hi, what are these movies about?" I was like, "Oh, okay, well, the Doc Shorts. It's about um, justice for school shootings. It's about fathers and sons with capital punishment. It's about a little girl who wants to play the drum. It's about this woman who was the first person in the Philharmonic, and then it's also why am I blanking on the other one? Oh, it's also about police brutality. And sometimes I think blindly if it's something that people are really passionate about, if they don't even like see it, I bet you any money they would vote for it before like any sort of requirement had to be made. I bet if they voted solely based on uh subject matter, something they're passionate about, I think that is something that people do take into consideration. Say for instance, they don't like the style of Incident. They wish it would had more of a talking head voiceover kind of thing. I think people, because they care about that cause or they care about that subject, they'll still vote for it.
But I guess when you have three causes that rightfully so people are very passionate about, how can we say which one they'd be most passionate about? Unless they watch it and are impressed by the filmmaking and all of the things that you mentioned.
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess it's sort of I wonder then if it has to come down to like I know Incident has played at a lot of film festivals. I know Incident was nominated at Critics' Choice. Um, I think like not saying that this is what it is, but I'm saying like say if Incident won a couple more prizes than say Instruments of a Beating Heart, does that mean that more people are tuned into that or they notice that sort of thing? They already think it's really rewarded. And so they think, oh, yeah, that's a prestigious movie. Even if I didn't like it that much, maybe I'll still vote for it. I don't know. It's really kind of hard to wonder, like with nonfiction filmmaking, how people weigh those options. It's kind of like if you think about it in terms of like say doc feature, there's a lot of passion behind No Other Land because of everything about that movie. But then also like say Black Box Diaries is a film about sexual assault. Do people? I wonder if some people go with the narrative of like this astonishing movie that still doesn't have a distributor, or if they think about something like we keep talking about, passionate about, want to honor, want to bring more eyeballs to, something like Black Box Diaries. Is that how do they? I think doc is such a weird thing to weigh. I don't know if maybe they just go with something that they are really familiar with, or what.
No, that's a great point, and I think you also very astutely mentioned like exposure and availability. And so I think that's going to matter too, and like accessibility and all those things, which is why I'm also worried about No Other Land. I mean, clearly, not to jump to another category, but clearly like there's passion behind it and people have seen it to nominate it, but I worry that like not enough people are seeing it, or like the lack of a distributor is going to hurt it.
Yeah, I think that's finally hitting theaters. I don't know how. I don't know anything really about theater distribution, but I heard it's coming to New York on, I think, this coming Friday, the 7th. Like someone looked it up that I know looked it up on like Fandango, and it says it's coming on February 7th. So I think maybe that'll help, drive up visibility for it. So we've been hearing about it for months and months and months, and the only people that really get to see it are like critics groups who vote on it. So I'm very curious to see how a public responds to that timely movie.
Let's go to New York, Joey.
Sure, let's do it.
Go see No Other Land. Okay, so I'm gonna take your word on this, and I'm gonna say Incident for the winner, with maybe Death by Numbers as the potential spoiler here.
I have Incident at number 1. I have I Am Ready Warden at number 2, with Death by Numbers at 3. I Am Ready Warden, I've seen it twice. I'm sort of kind of blown away by the emotion of that movie. You haven't seen that one, right?
I haven't. I think when we get off this, I'll like sit myself down and be like, get into your emotions and get into it.
It's a tough watch. It's really good. Yeah, it's about revisiting a crime. A person is about to be executed. In a weird way, the honesty of that movie, where the lead subject just keeps saying, "I'm a bad person. I deserve what happens to me." It's sort of a weird place to sit in, but I would be very curious to what you think about it. I wonder, like, that movie has been accessible on Paramount Plus for a while now, at least since the shortlists came out. That's how I watched it. Like Paramount Plus had like ABC's of book banning on it last year. I think Sheila Nevins, who's sort of like an Emmy legend, she I believe was a producer. Well, she directed ABC's of book banning last year that got nominated, and she's a producer of I think this one as well. So I think that might be one to watch out for.
Again, to go back to our conversation of like making a statement, I just wonder if Incident would be like the boldest statement in this kind of, or so, again, it just seems like police brutality is more in, God, I don't even know, in our zeitgeist at the moment, especially because we're having so many conversations about, well, what is DEI? Black History Month is controversial for.
Yeah.
I can't even articulate myself properly, but I just wonder if, as you mentioned, if you have this film that sort of dives into police brutality, like with such beauty and creativity, if we're talking about, again, how much politics is going to play into our winners this year, if that might be, I mean, that's why one of the reasons why many people are predicting it, I guess.
Yeah, and also it doesn't look like anything else. It doesn't. It sticks out in a way that it is it's confrontational in a way that is I don't know how I can really say this. It's confrontational in a way, in an honest way, because it's literally like this footage was available to the public for however many months. Bill Morrison just put it in a very succinct way. He doesn't let clutter get in the way of people's opinions or anything. He literally just like, here it is. And that, unfortunately, is timely over and over and over and over again. So I think that it's in a strong lead, I think. And then, but I do want to say that I do agree that Death by Numbers, the emotion of that thing is, that is a very present. It does do a really good job of mixing the personal, emotional story of somebody with facts of something that happened. Something that maybe you can even comment on, like any time that we saw the perpetrator of that school shooting, for most of the movie, they put a black X over their face. It's like, it's not about him. It's about the after effects of what this person did in this horrible act. And it's about like
that really, that part in particular really struck me as well. And what I think is interesting, and we can get into this because it touches on an animated film that's nominated, but again, I think Academy voters might respond to this idea of using a creative outlet to heal. I think that was a real powerful part of it. So I'll be interested to see if that, like, I agree. I think Incident is probably out front, but it wouldn't surprise me if people, again, get around to all of these, if that one ends up also, becoming more of a player.
Yeah.
Joey, any final thoughts on documentary short before we move on to animated?
I don't think so.
Well, I'm interested to get into animated because you think there's a film that's out front here, and I'm eager to know what it is because I really liked all 5 of these. So we have Beautiful Men, Yuck, In the Shadow of the Cypress, Wander to Wonder, and Magic Candies. I mentioned sort of the art and how Academy voters sort of may relate to that, which is why, in my opinion, Wander to Wonder is out front in these five. Would you agree?
Yeah, that movie is like a weird, like I say this all complimentary. It's what a weird, unique movie that is. It's kind of like, oh God, how did I describe it? It was kind of like Toy Story meets a little bit of Lord of the Flies or Yellow Jackets. It, there's so much texture there.
Yes.
That movie is so. When I watched all the films on the short list, I will say that was a little bit of a polarizing movie. But the people with the people that I watched it with, but the people that love that movie because it has such a unique perspective. It's so weird, and I do think in a very strange way, it's really whimsical, but also
Mm-hmm.
serious at the same time.
Yeah.
I was ready for like a Blair Witch Project close up of one of these toys' faces or puppets' faces. It's a really strange experience that I think Wonder to Wonder is the one to win right now. But I think there are a couple people or a couple films like coming up behind it. But I do think
Yeah.
that's number one.
I need to dig into this movie a little bit further because first of all, we need to just tell people who have not had the chance to see it what the plot is, which is these are characters that were in a children's TV programming, I believe, and they've
Yeah.
been left behind in the studio kind of reliving their glory days, which is why I think like Academy voters may relate to this idea of like days gone, days of the past, or sort of the nostalgia of what it was like to be a star that has perhaps faded a little bit. I agree with you. There's a lot of texture. I think the way that the animation, like the way that the characters emote, is really interesting. I can't
Mm-hmm.
really think of another sort of. I don't know. I don't want to be hyperbolic, but I can't. Maybe I just haven't seen as much animation, but they really emote in an interesting way that I don't think I've seen very much of before.
Yeah.
And I have to be honest, like when I was watching it, I really didn't like it. I was like, at some points, I was like kind of confused. I had to watch it again to fully understand what was even happening.
Yeah.
But what ended up happening after was that after I watched all five of them, that was the one that I kept like thinking about, and I was the most sort of emotionally struck by it. Which is why I'm predicting it to win because I just think it kind of, I don't know, it just made its way into my brain. I don't know if you do this too, but this happens to me all the time, Joey, with like movies, books, music, where sometimes I'll just straight up like not like something, but then the more I sit with it, the more I'm just like dissecting it, and then I end up really liking it. And I think that's where I am with Wander to Wonder at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically about like, yeah, a bunch of puppets that are left in the studio after I guess the person that made them dies, and they're running out of food, and all they have is their like their glory day is a little like Sunset Boulevard almost, like they're just, like it's like they're like basically going mad, and it plays around with like part of me when I first watched it, I was like, is it a combination of live action and animation? It plays like when you see the videos of them in their glory days, it's like the characters are fluffy and the colors are bright and it's green and orange and yellow, but then the real world that they live in, like the way they play with light and it's just really dark and creepy. Like something that I think a lot of people need to understand is like, sure, animation can be fluffy, it can be Disney, it can be Pixar, but sometimes they nominate stuff that is like real messed up. And like there was that one animated short that I'm still mad that it didn't win during the COVID Oscars, Bestia. I think it's like it was a Portuguese Oh god, I'm gonna butcher this, but it was like it was based on a true story about no, it was from Chile, a stop motion animated film about Chile under like a military dictatorship, and there was like really weird stuff with the dog, and it was really, really strange. So don't be fooled by weird or dark, everybody. They don't always go for fluffy, cute animals. Like there was a movie that was directed by David Lowery that I thought was it didn't even make it onto the short list, and Almost Christmas Story. It played on Disney Plus. It was this movie that they made like completely out of cardboard about an owl that gets separated from its father, and the owl ends up living in the Christmas tree in Rockefeller Center. I was like, of course they're gonna go for that. No, they're not. They didn't even shortlist it. So embrace the dark and the weird and the creepy sometimes, and I love when
still remember your Beastia rant, by the way. I was very privileged to be there for that rant. It will stay with me probably longer than one. Even though
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Joey.
But just on an award standpoint, like Wander to Wonder was nominated for the Annie. It was nominated at BAFTA. It won at the British Independent Film Awards. It won at like Chicago. It was nominated in Denver, the European Film Awards, Hong Kong International Film Festival, London Critics Film Circle Award. It won at the Nashville Film Festival. So this film has played everywhere. What a weird, creepy movie it is. I love
how I came at this with emotion, and then Joey was like, "Let me give you the stats."
Sorry.
No, that's why I wanted you here, because you know your stuff. Okay, so I think the rest of this category is also really interesting though, because you have In the Shadow of the Cypress, which is like maybe not as, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way at all. I think the animation is, you know, a little bit more simplistic, but the story, which is dealing with, you know, PTSD and sort of parenthood and all these kinds of things, is really striking. So I think on an emotional level, it really does deliver. And then you have, I would say, two films that are similar in that they're like a little bit more of like a coming to age type of thing. Yuck, which is about kids at camp and sort of experiencing their first kisses and puberty. I thought it was really sweet. It was kind of the most, I don't know if you would agree with this, but like traditionally, like kind of what we might see from a Pixar maybe.
Yeah, it's I wonder if that's actually a sleeper. Yuck, just because I think it's a little bit of a very relatable subject. Also, I'm gonna be full disclosure, the director is very handsome. Handsome Frenchman. And he talked to me about how because the movie has this this very interesting through line about how kids learn that they want to kiss somebody, and how they learn to be like sort of ashamed by that. But the visual cues, because like when the kids feel that they want to kiss somebody and their lips light up with this like sparkly color, he said something to me that was very interesting about how he wanted to make a movie not necessarily about shame, but about how it doesn't matter if we're man, woman, trans, non-binary, young or old, we are always so gay, straight, we are always very conscious of how other people look at us in terms of like desire. So I do agree, yes, it is maybe on the surface a little more traditionally animated. It's very bright, very colorful. I sort of went off on a tangent. Sorry. I didn't.
No. I again, tangent away, my friend. But no, I completely agree with you. And it's you know, sweet, easy to get into. It's like a breeze to watch. It just makes you smile. It makes you sort of nostalgic for your own childhood. And then I really liked Magic Candies as well, which is about a kid who discovers magic candies and has all, you know, his couch starts talking to him, his dog, he kind of rediscovers his bond with his dog because his dog starts talking to him. he kind of can hear his dad's thoughts, which I thought that was so sweet and touching. So I really liked that one too. Again, I think they're both just similar in the sense that they deal with children. And then we have Beautiful Men, which is about three brothers who go to Turkey for a hair transplant. Which, like, can we just tell me what you think about these 5 crops of nominees in general? Because, and I mentioned this because I had the bear named Watch Tech in my predictions.
Me too.
Like the entire time, and I was just, just went down with that ship completely and got a surprising crop instead. So I kind of, how did we get here, Joey?
This is well, first of all, Beautiful Men is a sort of, I guess, kind of like Wander to Wonder. It's very adult. I mean, you want an animated short with several accounts of full frontal male nudity, watch Beautiful Men. I didn't predict that because I thought, not that I didn't, I was very amused by that movie. I think that movie is really interesting in how it talks about how men are ashamed of everything, dealing with their emotions. How did we get here? What a great question. If you think about the 5 films, these are so different than anything. I had Bear Named Watch Tech in my predictions as well, because once you watch that film wasn't necessarily my favorite film onto the short list, but I was like, it's got all these like rich colors to it. Who doesn't love animals? That's going to get in. And I heard from several people saying that was the best one. When I did my little viewing party, I asked everyone to rate that movie on a scale of 1 to 10. That was the highest rated movie out of anything.
Wow.
So I had a feeling that Shadow of the Cypress, Yuck, Magic Candies would get in, and Wander to Wonder. I think Beautiful Men is the one that surprised me a little bit. I will say that, let me pull it up. I think animation, the best precursor. Shorts don't have precursors. That's why I think a lot of people don't cover them all year. But the Annie Awards,
and why they're very difficult to predict, by the way.
Yeah, like I always joke that like they call me, like on our website, the section for the shorts is called the Shorts Kingdom. Doesn't mean that I think that I know anything about the shorts. Far from it. It's just a joke about how not tall I am. So I feel like I have to keep clarifying that. I don't think really, in a lot of respects, anyone can be like a super expert on the shorts. But like this year, in the short category, where did it go? I'll find it eventually. But there's I think Wander to Wonder was one of the ones that was in there. Beautiful Men, I think, got a special mention. There are 5 films that I think that got into the Annie. So maybe that's a little bit of a way of saying, how did we get here? I'm not searching Wikipedia nearly fast enough, but it's 5 of these 5 films from the short list made it into the Annies in either the shorts category or like the special mention category. I will get to it in a second.
Well, Joey, while you look that up, if you had a runner-up, who do you think? You think Yuck would be probably, or do you think that Beautiful Men is just so weird and out there? and again, I have to bring up In the Shadow of the Cypress because I did watch like in the showcase where all the animated films are shown. They have an interview with the filmmakers, which I thought was really sweet, talking about how their personal histories inspired the film. So like that one does stand out in its own way. So how would you rank them? Who would your runner-up be?
How would I rank them? If I ranked them right now, I would probably say Wander to Wonder. I flip back and forth, so I'll just be bold and say Wander to Wonder, In the Shadow of the Cypress, Yuck, which keep flipping back and forth, then Beautiful Men and Magic Candies.
Well, let me ask you this. also, and you mentioned, I think we were talking about live action short. You said you're going to play it safe. Let's not play it safe for a second. Let's take some. If you're going to take a big swing,
All right.
what would it be?
Then I'm gonna say yuck.
Okay, what about the other categories? You got any big
Oh, big
swings?
swings.
Any? Yeah.
Ooh. Let's see. Documentary.
That way, even if you don't officially predict it, you can always say that you did say it on Chasing the Gold. It's in the record that you did
Fine,
make a
let's be
big
risky.
swing. Yeah.
If I was being risky, I would say across all three categories, Anuja, yuck, and I'm Ready Warden. Ugh.
Don't worry, I won't hold it to you. Okay.
Okay.
And we did talk about some of the shorts that you really love from this year, your beloved Bestia from the past. If people wanted to do more of a deep dive, and I will say again, I will have all of the shorts and where you can find them, including some of the non-nominated ones that we talked about in the show notes. But if you just wanted to give people like your favorite shorts or just something to people could check out, are there any other ones that we didn't talk about that you think deserve a special mention?
Yeah. There was a short film. I would have to check and see if it's still available. That I was literally gobsmacked that it did not even get shortlisted. It is a movie called Motherland. I actually thought going into the shortlist announcement that I think it actually could have won. I'm gonna just pull up the name of the director. It's a film about the late 70s. It's the height of the Iranian hostage crisis, and it is about a Iranian man who goes back with his girlfriend to meet her parents for the first time. And it is, I just think it's incredibly well acted. It's from filmmaker Jasmine Mozaffari. It was produced by, I'm blanking on his name. He was in Succession. Arian.
Oh, R.A. Muhammad.
Yes,
Yeah.
I spoke to them like 2 days after the election. And it was I don't know. We had a very sort of long, careful conversation. We literally talked for like 45 minutes, and it made me even appreciate the movie more. It was available online. You can check if it is still there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's sort of about a man who maybe not necessarily puts his identity aside, but it's a very volatile time in America, and it's about this young couple who realizes that volatility can sort of enter their relationship, and it can, where they are at the beginning, they are completely changed by the end. And there's this like really intense conversation between the lead character's name is Babak, who with her father, who happens to be a German immigrant. And it's sort of about how people think there are good immigrants and bad immigrants. If there's so much stuff in that movie that I love, and I was really upset that it did not get in. I was shocked, Shadan. I was absolutely shocked that did not get in.
Well, I'm shocked that you had a Iranian short film that you did not tell me about until today. Come on, Joey. Come on.
Right.
Speaking of Persian things that I should recommend, have you read Martyr by Kaveh Akbar?
Mm-hmm.
It's about I guess he immigrated to the United States as a child, but and he's Iranian, but it's really good. The writing is really striking, and it's actually I listened to it on audio, and Aryan Muhammad narrated it, and his narration is stunning, and the language is really beautiful. So if you wanted to further dig into Iranian trauma, by all means, I think Martyr is fantastic.
Okay, yeah, bring it on.
Yeah. All right, Joey. So I think we have a trip to New York planned, and I think afterwards we should go to Turkey and get hair transplants. What do you say?
Good. I was too scared to bring it up until just now, so let's do it.
Yeah. Any final thoughts before I let you go?
I say this to anyone who talks about shorts. Like, shorts are playing everywhere. Like, if you literally just search short films 2025, you will be so surprised. Go on to shortoftheweek.com. They recommend a new short film every week, and I think people will be very surprised how easy it is to fall into a rabbit hole.
Yeah, and I know once we get closer to the Oscars, a lot of even like the big theater chains will do the short film showcases. So I always encourage people to check those out. And speaking of Joey, like you mentioned the theater in Pittsburgh. Like a lot of these indie theaters, which I'm always pro supporting, will show short films. Museums will show short films all the time. So it's a great way to not only support shorts and these emerging filmmakers, but also just like these art centers within your community. So kind of two birds with one stone type of a thing. But Joey, thank you so much. And as I mentioned, you're going to be humble and say, well, I'm not a shorts expert. But if there is a shorts expert, I think you rank among the very top. So thank you for being here. Everyone go to The Contending and read all of Joey's all the incredible content on the site in general, but Joey's shorts coverage and all of the interviews that he mentioned. And Joey, I can't wait to have you back.
Sure. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
And and Joey, where can people follow? We mentioned The Contending, but where can people follow you on social media? Follow the site. Give yourself a plug.
I will be having some new short film interviews coming up in the next week or so. You can find me on Twitter at Joey Moser 83. I think I'm just Joey Moser everywhere else. Blue Sky, Instagram. Come say hi. I'm a friendly person.
Yes, Joey is a fantastic follow. Follow In Session Film. I'm at Shadan Larkey everywhere. Rate and review the podcast. And have a good weekend, everybody. We'll catch you on the next one.